Today we honor the life and legacy of the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., known as the Lion of Atlanta. On his 83rd birthday, we would like to commemorate all that he has done for our people. As I move forward, I'm going to read a passage to you of a new article that I'm working towards called The Lion of Atlanta, Maynard Jackson, the Politics and Practice of Economic Inclusion. In the summer of 2019, Atlanta's Black public history witnessed a confrontation of two legacies of two major historical figures in one historic neighborhood resting on the crux of Black Atlanta. The venue Sunset Avenue, a neighborhood adjacent to the Atlanta University Center, just due north of Interstate 20 and west of Atlanta's downtown. Here, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. lived out his final days at 234 Sunset. Yet Dr. King was not the only historical figure who called Sunset Avenue home. The apartment building located at 220 Sunset Avenue housed another towering figure in Atlanta's history, serving as the childhood home of the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., Atlanta's first Black mayor, whose ambiance as the Lion of Atlanta still looms largely over this city. If Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is Atlanta's most beloved son, the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr. is Atlanta's most beloved champion. And so today we're going to commemorate this great man. At this time, we're going to have the welcome and occasion by Mr. Mac Wilburn, who's a business associate and friend of Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr.
Good evening. It is evening, right?
We're good.
Okay, yeah, it's evening, 12:09. Right. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for coming out. But first of all, in honor to the Jackson family, who is like my heart, been my friend since I moved here, and today is his birthday. Happy birthday, MJ. And thank you all for coming out, and let's make it happen. Monty, don't let me down today, okay?
You know that we cannot have a commemoration of this magnitude without a word of prayer. So at this time, I'd like to call Mr. John Blackshear, Chairman of the Deacons Board at Friendship Baptist Church. It's important to know that Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr. was a lifelong member of Friendship Baptist Church. And so we want to make sure that we give the man his due from his own people. And his father, Maynard Holbrook Jackson Sr., was pastor at Friendship Baptist Church.
Let us bow our heads and go to our God in prayer. God, we give special thanks to you for providing this community a giant of a leader for all people. Father God, we're thankful for this leader who put his words into action and brought so many along with him. Father, we're thankful for the dreams you placed in his heart and providing him the strength to implement them. A willingness not to accept no when he knew it was the direction you were providing for his life. So many of us have benefited from the life and legacy of Maynard Jackson Jr. So many of us would not have the opportunity for luxurious careers if Maynard had not paved the way. But Brother Jackson was much more than just an accomplished leader. He was quite a family man, giving of all that he had to his wife and his children. With all he accomplished in life and the earthly status he gained, he remained a humble man, very approachable, never forgetting the place from which he came and never forgetting the provider of every gift. God, we thank you for the life of Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., your devoted servant, and all the lives he impacted and changed for the better. He truly left this a better place than he found it. May he continue to rest in your peace with you until we all meet again. Amen.
Now we will have highlights, a video from the Honorable Keisha Lance Bottoms and the Honorable Andrew Jackson Young, a video, in terms of a video. And then I will follow up with some oral highlights.
Hello, I'm Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. As Atlanta's first African American mayor and the first black mayor of a major city in the Southeast, Maynard Jackson was and still is an icon and legend in the city of Atlanta, throughout the nation, and a personal hero of mine. When it came to business for black Atlantans, he pushed for a seat at the table and laid the foundation for the explosion of business we see in our city today. He believed that black business was good business, and he was right. Without his determination to make sure that everyone was included, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport would not be what it is today. Our metrics for minority participation has yielded one of the best airport concessions programs in the world. With Ambassador Andrew Young and Billy Payne, he led the campaign that brought the Centennial Olympic Games to our city in 1996. It was Mayor Jackson's belief that the world could and would come to Atlanta for the Olympic Games. Mayor Jackson believed in Atlanta, and we believed in him. And with that, Atlanta became a true international city. Personally, Maynard's legacy of equity and inclusion across our city is what sticks with me most. He believed in the power of diversity and the potential of the collective. At his swearing-in 1973, he spoke of seeing the other Atlanta, the one across the tracks, the inner city one, the Atlanta in the valleys and the shadows just beyond the first expressway exits one passes when leaving downtown. When I took office in 2018, our administration set out to create our vision of One Atlanta, an affordable, resilient, and equitable city for all who call it home. We know the other Atlanta still exists, and it's our goal to level the playing field so that all can celebrate the diversity and success that makes our city so dynamic and vibrant. We are working each and every day to bring everyone closer to that One Atlanta vision, to ensure that no matter what side of the city you come from, your opportunities and avenues for success aren't limited. Maynard and his ideas were not always popular, and that's something I certainly can relate to. He realized that unwelcome or unpopular did not mean wrong, and that it's often necessary to sit in discomfort of now to be on the right side of history later. Maynard Jackson was a bold, gregarious agent of change, and our city is better for having his leadership. I hope we always remember the foundation he laid as we continue this important work.
I think that one of the things that Maynard did, and as mayor, was start training not the next generation, but the next generations. And so he put people in key positions in government. And he set up a curriculum to develop leadership. And that's been very important to the city.
As many of you may or may not know, I had the distinct pleasure of serving as the historian for the Maynard Jackson documentary. And one of the things that is particularly unique about Maynard Jackson is Atlanta's notoriety as a city too busy to hate, as the Black Mecca, as Hot Atlanta, and all of these different things. It's based on three things historically and a fourth thing currently. Black education with the Atlanta University Center, 6 historically black colleges founded between 1865 and 1886. Black economics, particularly with the Sweet Auburn district deemed as the richest Negro street in the world. But the true aspect of it was not only rich economically, politically as well. Black political empowerment and electoral politics. And the fourth and final is Black expressive culture. Maynard Jackson's thread is through all of that. In 1973, Atlanta's Black communities, along with a unique coalition of white progressives, elected Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr. as the city's first Black mayor. Jackson's election was epic for Southern Black political empowerment and electoral politics of the South, and thus Atlanta's status took on new meanings. Jackson's first term as mayor was full of political success. His affirmative action policies became the gold standard for American industry, producing an overabundance of millionaires of color, buttressed by the expansion of Atlanta's airport and public transportation, Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, and presented economic inclusion as a significant contribution to the modern civil rights movement. Both crime and police brutality subsided during Jackson's first term, and his creation of the Neighborhood Planning Unit allowed for Black communities to have a say in the city's development of their communities, which prevented displacement through gentrification. This particular presentation will focus on the life and legacy of Atlanta's most beloved champion, the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., and how he extended the discourse of the civil and human rights through political and economic inclusion. We will discuss today Jackson's legacy, from being sired into one of Atlanta's most influential families, to his run to the U.S. Senate, and his election to being the city's first Black mayor, and his legacy in terms of affirmative action and process. As we look east here, and we see the city that Maynard Jackson had a major influence on, let us remember the power and politics of the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr. I would like to take a little bit of time today. I had the particular pleasure of doing a series of interviews with Maynard Jackson's family, with the Maynard Jackson Youth Foundation, and with some of Maynard Jackson's colleagues while he was in office. And they told very interesting stories about the late mayor. One of the things about his family that I found to be absolutely interesting was his first son-in-law, as Howie Hodges refers to himself as his first son-in-law. And he talks about dating his daughter Beth, and how Beth told him, you need to wear a tie, you need to understand, proper diction. And he goes in and he engages this intimidating figure, and Maynard Jackson slides him a $50 bill and says, make sure you take my daughter out in the right kind of way. In terms of the political conversations around his colleagues, one of the most interesting was Mr. Angelo Fustier, who talked about their visit to Cuba and how Fidel Castro shows up to see Maynard Jackson, and Maynard Jackson was looking at his watch and saying, hey, it's time for us to go to the Pan American Games. And Fidel Castro says, well, I'm sure that they won't start without me. But what I found to be absolutely most engaging was his work with the Maynard Jackson Youth Foundation. The young people that Maynard Jackson was able to empower. Many of them talked about Mayor Jackson not as the mayor of Atlanta, but as this big brother kind of uncle figure who made sure that he taught young people how to eat at restaurants. He taught them etiquette, but he also pushed them forward. This is where we see Maynard Jackson creating a legacy in terms of building leadership in youth. So as we commemorate the life and legacy of the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., let us consider these things. At this time, we will have remarks from the Honorable Thelma Wyatt Cummings Moore.
Thank you. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. How does it feel to relive the moment? This is sensational. Thank you so very much, Mac Wilburn, all who have assisted and participated, and all who are joining in today at this most worthwhile. Thanks to all of the city council persons. And as far as the legal group, we have Thomas Cuffey, and I can't see him, but Judge Mickle of the City Court of Atlanta. And that's where I would start, because Maynard not only had a vision to redo the city of Atlanta economically, he also wanted to change the judicial system so that it was no longer a police court. It was, when Maynard came into office, a situation where there were two judges and they wore the short robes that came here. The reason they wore the short robes is because they carried pistols in their pockets and they had to be able to get to them. It was just that bad at the municipal court. The offices were latrines. We had to share those and we parked outside where anyone could come and overtake us. But the way I actually happened to get on the municipal court then was somewhat a difficult situation. One day I was parked in the parking lot at City Hall, and Maynard came by my car and said, "How would you like to go on the municipal court?" It stunned me, this towering figure of our mayor asking me if I would like to serve on the municipal court. I had not given it any thought because I was at that time relegated to my career as an attorney. But Clarence Cooper, Judge Clarence Cooper, now on the federal court bench and a senior judge there, stated that he wanted to take the opportunity to go to Harvard University for the John F. Kennedy School of Government. And therefore, there would not be the diversity on the municipal court. And it was Maynard who had appointed Judge Cooper. So I knew all of this lay in front of me, but I still wasn't ready to respond to our mayor. So I looked at him and said, "Let me get back to you." And now that is something that is different also, because these days people want to go so badly on the municipal court that they hand out their resumes. It is a sought after position. Well, I didn't get back to Maynard as I had promised, but rather about 2 weeks later, I was again in the parking lot at City Hall. Maynard came by my car again and said, "Well, have you made up your mind yet?" And there in that instant, I made up my mind. And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And that is how I happened to enter the judiciary in the city of Atlanta, which also propelled me further into state judiciary. But it shows how committed Maynard was to changing the face of the judiciary so that it actually reflected justice. And that's what we were all about. Mary Sue Welcome was the prosecutor or the solicitor at the municipal court. Howard Johnson and Lynn Watley were the public defenders. So we no longer had a situation where people would just come in and be shuffled off to jail. We didn't have a situation where there was no justice. And the municipal court, as you well know, council members, has grown to be the Linwood Jackson Court of Atlanta. And it is indeed a vision that Maynard created so that all people who came before the benches there would receive true justice. And so to Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr., I say we are so very grateful to you. We want everyone to know your legacy all across the board, and we are so very grateful. You are our beloved first African American mayor of Atlanta. Thank you.
At this time, we will have remarks from Mrs. Valerie Richardson Jackson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh my gosh. I am so very touched by your presence here today to remember and honor the spirit and legacy of Maynard Jackson. I want to give a special thank you to my brother from another mother, Mac Wilborn. Mac was one of the first people, yes, give him a hand, he deserves it. Mac was one of the very first people that Maynard introduced me to when I first came to Atlanta almost 44 years ago. And we have been fast friends since that first day. Excuse me. Sorry. Not only has he been a staunch supporter for the Maynard Jackson Youth Foundation, he's also taught me a lot about good food and good cooking. And one of the things that I really miss the most during this pandemic is having home-cooked meals at Mac's house. Mac, I am so looking forward to when we can get back to those good old days. Mac has always had great respect and admiration for Maynard, as have so many Atlantans, including all of you here today. And although it's been almost 18 years since he passed, there's not a day that I don't go out when someone does not stop me and mention Maynard, how much he's missed, and how much his leadership is needed today. As I listen to the Reverend Senator, I guess I should have said the Senator Reverend, but as I listen to, because he's already Reverend Warnock to me, he'll always be. As I listened to him give his first speech on the Senate floor the last week, I couldn't help but think about Maynard as he talked about how he now holds the Senate seat that once belonged to a staunch segregationalist, Senator Herman Talmadge, whom Maynard called, and I quote, the preeminent Georgia symbol of intolerance, racial oppression, and hypocrisy. The man who wrote the primer for how to avoid racial integration, titled You and Segregation, end quote. I thought about how 53 years ago, Maynard quit his job as director of the Emory Community Legal Services Center and raised $3,000 to pay the qualifying fee to challenge Herman Talmadge. He was spurred on by the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. And he was also angry because no one had dared to challenge this racist senator for his seat. 53 years ago, even though he did not win the state of Georgia, he did carry Atlanta, and that opened the doors to his greatness and Atlanta's greatness. 53 years ago, Maynard Jackson was a man ahead of his time. It took 53 years for a black person to finally claim that Senate seat that Maynard had sought. Think of the greatness, though, that Maynard could have brought to that seat. Think about it. And think about all the talented black leaders who have come through in the past 50 years who could have sat in that seat and brought a lot to the Senate leadership, talented young black people, and could have been there but for the color of their skin. I know Maynard was grinning and beaming down on us as Reverend Warnock took his oath in the Senate. Oh my gosh, I'm still getting emotional about it myself. Thank God that Reverend Warnock was a determined soul. Thank God that John Ossoff was a determined young man who, by the way, when he was 6 years old, helped Maynard to campaign, a friend of my niece's. And speaking of family, I've got to introduce my brother, Monty Richardson, who helped me design this monument. Raise your hand, Monty. With my nephew wearing his Maynard shirt, which he's been wearing since he was about 10, if not earlier, and my niece, Nicole. But thank God that all of these strong people were determined souls, had wills of steel, and were determined to bring about change to Atlanta and Georgia. Their will is what leads me to Maynard's favorite poem, Will, by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And I will close with that poem. There is no chance, no destiny, no fate can circumvent or hinder or control the firm resolve of a determined soul. What obstacle can stay the sea-seeking river in its course, or cause the ascending orb to wait? Each well-born soul must win what it deserves. Let the fool prate of luck. The fortunate is he or she whose earnest purpose never swerves, whose slightest action or inaction serves the one great aim. Why, even death stands still and waits an hour sometimes on such a will. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Now, family, you know we can't have a celebration of this magnitude without some good music. And so I'd like to present to some and introduce to others Miss Jaleese Wilson, who will provide us a musical selection.
When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. When that makes the tall trees bend into leaning, suddenly the raindrops that fall have a meaning, sprinkling the sea makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I have some direction. It sure would be nice to be back home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time in my life to grow up. Time be my friend, let me start over again. Suddenly my world's grown and changed its face, but still I know where I'm going. I have had my mind spun around in space, and yet I've watched it growing. Oh, if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to know if we should believe the things we see. Tell us, should we run away? Should we try and stay? Is it better just to let things be? Living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy.
At this time, we'll have remarks from Mr. Daniel Halpern, business partner and friend of the Honorable Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hopkins. One of the first lessons I learned from Maynard was be very careful who you follow, and following her is not very fair to me. So every day with Maynard was a lesson. But the first thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge some of the folks that are here. Obviously, I see some elected officials, both current and previous administrations. If our electeds would stand up. I think obviously Maynard loved politics as much as anything, and just to know that members of what he thought was the most distinguished body ever, the Atlanta City Council, here would make him feel really good. Also, I see some former employees of his from Jackson Securities. They're here. Obviously, folks from the Maynard Jackson Youth Foundation. And I think also, as somebody I'll acknowledge, Angelo and other members of Maynard's administrations when he was the mayor. So, you know, that was his family. All of us were his family. And for that, he was extraordinarily passionate about. I'd be really remiss if I didn't thank Mac Wilburn. Mac, stand up. I was very fortunate in Atlanta. Like 3 people kind of were my rabbis, godfathers: Maynard Jackson, Mac Wilburn, and Nate Golston. I don't know anybody who's had a better entry into Atlanta than having those 3 guys look out for you. Obviously, Mac was the guy that got me in trouble. Maynard wasn't one that kept me out of, or tried to keep me out of trouble. And also Travis and Patricia Allen for all that they did, and all the volunteers. But I think Mac doing this really speaks to who Maynard was and what Atlanta was, unfortunately, prior to when I got here. I wish I would have been here then, but I wasn't. But history matters. And those of you who are elected officials now, whether you've been in office for a short time or a long time, understand that Atlanta has a very special history. As we travel around the country, a lot of us, everybody still wants to emulate Atlanta. And that really is a testament to Maynard Jackson. And I see that all over the places I travel around the country. So for somebody like Mac, who was introduced to Ambassador Andrew Young by Maynard Jackson in the early 80s because he had raised $25,000 to elect black county commissioners in the state of Georgia, that's the history of Atlanta. So, Mac, I don't know if you remember, but 2 years ago today, we were riding 4-wheelers through the desert in Namibia with Ambassador Young on a very special trip. But Mac is that guy. And a couple of weeks ago, Mac and I had the opportunity, we were on a Zoom call with President Clinton, and it was the day after Vernon Jordan's funeral. And we were talking with President Clinton about Vernon, and obviously President Clinton, who knows everything, did not know that Maynard and Vernon Jordan went to high school together and actually had played hooky on playing in a band ceremony for then Senator Dick Russell. So Mac and I were just extraordinarily happy that we could actually lay some wisdom on President Clinton. But I just want to thank everybody who's come out today, because Maynard meant a lot to a lot of us in a lot of different ways. And I think that one thing that somebody in this audience say, I won't give him any attribution so I don't get him in any trouble, but sometimes maybe we talk about politicians, and sometimes people aren't as flattering about politicians as maybe they should be, because it really is a hard job. But the one thing that Maynard always did, whether he made any of us in the audience mad, he always cared about Atlanta. He put Atlanta first. And that really was what Maynard stood for. And as I kind of wake up every day and I think about what did he stand for, it's do the right thing. You know, you must follow your conviction, you must follow your passion, but you have to do what's right. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming out, and once again, thank my good friend Mac Wilburn. Thank you, everybody.
Hello, everybody. My name is Wayne Martin, and I am a 2000 alum of the Maynard Jackson Youth Foundation. And I just, I'm elated to stand here in this moment. It's a Tuesday. We have perfect campaign weather. I'm wearing a campaign-style T-shirt, and I was putting out yard signs that said Maynard, we lived the moment earlier. So I believe Maynard's in heaven running a campaign right now to be the mayor of the streets paved with gold and the pearly gates. Come on, it's all right. We can give him an applause. It's just a great feeling to be out here commemorating the life of this wonderful man. I would be remiss if I did not recognize, I see elected officials here. This is like the safest spot in Atlanta right now. I see sheriffs from about 3 counties. Could you all stand and wave? Maynard was very big on law enforcement and keeping our city safe. And these individuals, these men and women, are standing strong and proud. I see Chief Bell. He'll always be Chief Bell to me. He's going to come in a moment and give words. I see Larry Dingle. I see Andrew Patterson. I see Camille, Russell Love. These are all former employees of Maynard's, folks that he raised up. Would you all stand and just kind of wave and be recognized as well? If you can, just raise your hand high. So glad to see you all. I see Brooke. Hey, Brooke. That's Maynard's daughter. Please give her a round of applause. Colonel Holly is here, the first president and CEO of the Maynard Jackson Youth Foundation. There he is. Virgil Murray is here. They're bookending the Youth Foundation's leadership. And so many wonderful people are here. Pat and Travis, what can we say about these two individuals? Thank you so much for your hard work on today. That's right. That's right. And we cannot forget about Big Mac himself. Mac Wilborn. Come on, let's just give him a round of applause. Certainly last but not least, his bride, the beautiful, the vivacious Valerie Richardson Jackson in her black and gold. Can we give her a round of applause? She just spoke, but Maynard will want her honored. I would not be who I am today if it were not for Maynard Jackson. I was telling JC earlier that Maynard snatched me out of the halls of Thurl High School, where drugs were being sold in the school. He came and grabbed me. He sent Colonel Holly to my homeroom class to pull me out, and he said that there's something about you that's special, and we're going to do everything we can to bring it out of you. And I am standing here today with a clean record, a Morehouse man, an Alpha man. I am a mid-level executive at Starbucks Coffee Company now, and it is all because of Maynard Holbrook Jackson. We are who we are because of this man. And I think that this city owes him a great debt of gratitude, and I will spend every day of my life until I take my last breath in making sure that he is honored in the way that he is supposed to be. Maynard did not just typify black excellence. Maynard embodied excellence, period. Everything about him was excellent. I was with a young person earlier that told me that, Brooke, I was with Bruce earlier, your classmate from Southwest Middle School. He told me that he came down to City Hall thinking he was a big dog and mispronounced a word, and Maynard corrected him in front of everybody. And from that point forward, he always spoke perfect English. Well, Maynard got me one time when I said shrimps at a restaurant. But you know, Maynard never made you feel small when he corrected you. You just felt better. And so I want to thank Maynard for everything that he did for me. I am who I am, you are who you are, and this city is what it is because of Maynard Holbrook Jackson. Next voice we hear after mine is the honorable man himself, Chief Eldrin Bell.
How's everybody? I go back much further with Maynard than most of you do. I remember when Buzzy was short and Brooke was had not even learned to swim yet. Great pools in the backyard, and I remember Mac Wilburn, and we all have a Mac Wilburn story, but I won't tell mine. I had the opportunity to go to school with Maynard Jackson. We both studied at the feet of many instructors at the David T. Howard High School, along with Vernon Jordan and including Martin Luther King Jr. and others. So most of the people that I speak of, I remember them when they were young and small. As a matter of fact, Maynard wanted to play football more than anything else, and he never got to play football, but he passed Jono, who is his sister, and I in Dr. X.L. Neal's school at David T. Howard High School, where we all studied together. I had the distinction of coming back and traveling with Maynard more than 70 times throughout our country. And I learned one thing about him that I'm sure that you all have learned. When Maynard opened his mouth, others listened. And in many instances, when I would visit the sites where he were to speak and others were going before him, I, like many of you in the beginning, doubted that he was going to be able to outspeak some of them until he got the microphone. And the way I noted his popularity and his presence is the fact that the media, once the thing was over, they followed Maynard instead of following all of the others. We were in class together and we started this journey of being mayor. The night when he won and all people had gone home and I was there with him, he sat down and in his famous way would take both of his hands and rub it through his hair and say, I got this thing, now what am I going to do with it? And he started the next morning at 7 o'clock when I went to the office with him, sitting down at a desk that was too short for him because Sam Massell had the legs cut off. And it went on from there. He was a great man. He represented us well. And those of you who are at his foundation, our children are the messages we send to the future, a time and place we may never see. What will that message be? You are the center cryon of that message. Be what Maynard wanted you to be, the best of the best.
I'm Monty Richardson, Valerie's brother. I came to Atlanta 42 years ago to be with my sister and the rest of this great city. And Maynard, like almost everybody here, changed your life, changed my life, I should say. And it's one of those things that I'll just try to let people know whenever I talk about him, is that what an impact he had on me. Typical examples about Maynard. When I was struck with this illness about a dozen years ago, I was asleep one night and I had a dream. Maynard had been dead about 3-4 years at that point, and he came to me in the dream. He had that big smile. Everybody knows Maynard with that big smile, that, you know, beautiful grin. And he looked at me and he said, "Brother, don't worry. 3 things: breathe, believe, and behave." And I thought about that when I woke up. It was like an epiphany, because it was so true. Breathe, stay calm, don't panic, believe in yourself, believe. In other words, have faith, believe you can sustain yourself, don't give up, and behave. Do the things you should do and don't do the things you should not. And it was like something to kind of live by that helped me sustain myself as I have dealt with this for a dozen years. But that was his personality. You know, everybody says it was easy to love Maynard because you could tell he loved you. He really did. But one of the things that he would always do, no matter what, he would recognize family. No matter what event, how many people, family was there, he'd recognize them, right? And in the back, on the left, under the window, my third cousin, Sheila Marie Jackson Brown. Sheila's working at Six Flags this summer, gate attendant. But doctor, she is the best gate attendant in the park. You know, he was like that. You know, we used to joke for years about how endearing Maynard's personality was. And I think that's something that beyond all of the greatness, you know, that he achieved, both for the city, for himself, and for so many of his family and friends, he was just a cool dude, you know, and I miss him terribly. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
So that presentation will conclude this event. Please feel free to mingle, social distance, distantly, of course. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you all for your time.